Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Professionals Podcast. My name is Guy Dawson, and I am your host. And I am here with Sheena Walker. She is an author, a coach, and a trainer who works with high-level executives, and she's going to share her perspectives on professionalism with us today. Welcome, Sheena.
Thank you, Guy, for asking me. I remember we first met when we were both much younger, so it's nice to come back and chat to you.
Yes, we were 2 years younger than we are right
Two
now.
years,
And yeah, things have really changed a lot, haven't they?
2 years younger, yes.
In the last 2 years. It's a pleasure to have you back, Sheena. And the Professionals Podcast is all about, as I had mentioned before, the perspectives of being a professional. And from your point of view, what is it to be a professional?
Well, I used to think that being a professional meant that you had a specific trade, like you were a joiner, an electrician, you were a dentist, you were a doctor. That's a professional post. But now I think that being professional is about how you personally act personally and in your role at work. And I think one of the main areas of professionalism is your judgment. What do you think how do you stand for your role? I think that I've got two words I use. It's about being professional as a quality standard. And I use that. If you're professional, you have a quality standard in your own personal development. You have a quality standard in industry, in customer service, in finance. In many areas, you would have a quality standard and be able to demonstrate that. But unfortunately, one of the areas of the personal professionalism is people's attitude and behaviour, which I think can be the downfall of many people in an organisation.
And in your profession is really all about helping people to take their performance to a higher level. What are some of the things that you encourage people who you work with to do to become greater professionals, to become the elite performers in their industries that you are working with them to become?
There's four areas that I highlight to the people that I work with, and that is that most of them are very skilled. They've got expertise and knowledge. And I share with them how I can help them to take their expertise and their knowledge to be positioned as an authority. And I do that by doing two things. I teach them world-class business mastery, and I also teach them world-class speaking so they can lead the field. But the four areas that I look at, particularly with business executives, is help them to identify what their area of expertise is. Because sometimes they do a million things and they get kind of lost. The second thing is, do they have a framework or a system that they can use in their organization? Or if they go out to speak, what is that? What is that framework they use? The third thing is being consistent in everything they do, so that one idea, that one direction, that one way of thinking actually stabilizes them and gets them to be positioned as that expert. But the fourth thing that's really important is being mentored and being corrected so as they have a new direction to get results. And with all of that, I usually link it to being an athlete. If you're Andy Murray, the tennis player, and you get coaching today, you don't go on the court tomorrow and do what you did yesterday. You just immediately execute an action. I'm sure you would agree with that, Guy, that taking action very quickly is what helps executives move on.
Oh, absolutely. I think that a lot of professionalism is driven through action. You get an inspiration from some direction to do something, and then it's about moving in the direction of the thing it is that you want to accomplish. I think that most professionals they're pretty proficient at that. They understand the importance of movement. Movement really triggers a lot of things, and it allows you to end up performing at a higher level. I mean, sometimes plans that you are able to execute, from my perspective, Sheena, it was just a matter of getting started that made the
Yes.
whole thing happen in the first place. The difference between that vision that you had or that dream you had is just getting started, moving in the right direction.
And I think what's happened in our dynamic economy, particularly since COVID, is that the workforce and how people work and think has changed. And somebody was telling me, or somebody I was speaking to was saying to me that he's a CEO and he's never gone and visited his clients. The salespeople, or they'll go out and do presentations. And now companies are asking for the CEO to go and visit them. They're asking for the CEO to tell them about their company and their services. Now, that was unheard of before. And now all of a sudden, these CEOs are saying, oh my goodness, what will I say? What will I share? How can I showcase my company? What will I tell them I do? Now, they know all that because they've got it in their head, but they need to be able to have some sort of system and formula that when they go out to speak, they have these influential conversations and build rapport with their clients. So there's been a huge shift. And I guess that my program, Performance by Design, it's about designing you to be different and designing your service to be different.
And it's these organizations that you're working with, as you mentioned, you're working with CEOs and people who are at the top of the pyramid in an organization. You were saying a minute ago that you've got these CEOs now who are having to actually go out and do things that they're not accustomed to doing. How do you get a CEO or someone who's a leader of an organization to be more proficient at the projection of the culture? Because what you had mentioned a minute ago is that leader has to embody the culture. What do you think about that in terms of professionalism?
I think that it's interesting. I was training today and we were speaking about leadership and speaking about how CEOs need to develop leadership and have the confidence so their staff see them. And I think this is a brilliant saying is your CEO ambassadorial? Do they lead? Do they lead from the front? Does their team look at them and say, wow, he's got such a supervision of what he wants to see in the company. He's told us his strategic direction. He's told us what he wants us to do this year and how he wants us to develop people. But sometimes what I find is that people take a little while to put their hand up and say, do you know what? I need help. I need help to actually change how I'm thinking and what I'm doing. But I do think that being able to explain sporting analogies, or my sons are musicians, and being able even to say that they practiced every day for 10 years to be world class, sharing great stories can sometimes plant the seed for somebody to say, do you know, wow, I do need to step up.
Absolutely. Stories sell. I mean, I'm personally being in the public relations and marketing business for many years. All of our endeavors are story oriented.
Yeah.
It really is. It's you're telling the story of the organization or the individual or whatever it is that you're representing, and that culture piece. Being able to tell that story. And I was actually, Sheena, I was listening to a speaker a couple of weeks ago. His name is Ed Mylett. Maybe you've heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
But Ed Mylett's a world-class speaker, and I had the opportunity to listen to him in a live setting. And he talked about something that related a lot to professionalism that I wanted to get your opinion about here. He talked about being an evangelist for your mission or your cause, and that anyone who's a leader in an organization, if it's an organization of one or if it's an organization of 10,000, that leader has to be the evangelist, the person who's trumpeting the story the loudest.
And yes, I think that's a brilliant phrase, being an evangelist. It's almost like though you can't speak politics and religion, but being an evangelist is going out to the world, sharing your message, sharing a message that's impactful, going to add value to everything that you do. And people think, wow, yeah. I think that links into emotional intelligence in a big way, because emotional intelligence is about how you're perceived by others. And many people in the business world are not aware of how they're perceived by other people. They're not aware of how they come across in a team, how they come across sharing skills, how they come across when there's a new direction. And I think, they have to be taught that. They have to be taught what that means. And it's almost like you need to be a student. I was out in my garage the other day, and every time I go out, I keep saying, I'm going to throw out these 3 big boxes of books. I end up sitting on a chair reading them. And I think, oh, I'll just keep that book. I'll just keep that book. And I end up thinking, oh, I forgot about that. We need to every day be a student of learning, whether it's wellness or finance or looking after us, but looking after our business. And that's being an evangelist, isn't it? It's this whole big picture of well-being.
Yes, there's so much ground to cover as a professional. And you, Sheena, again, working with people who are really wanting to achieve at the highest level, what are some of the things that you do with a person? Let's talk from a communication point of view, because before we came on air today, a lot of the things, we had a great conversation and we were talking about communication and professionalism. If you were to be working with a person and you wanted to help them to rise to higher levels of professionalism with their communication, what types of things would you work with them on?
Well, I'd start off with, I have a program called Different Stages, the Different Stages model, and it's got 7 areas in it. And the very first thing that I work with people on is the essentials of what is fundamentals of speaking. How do you use your voice? How do you use your body language? How do you convey words with meaning? And even as simple as how you use the power of pause and pace. And I know that we talked about Toastmasters and how you do all of that, but learning the fundamentals. So then the second stage of that would be, how do you position yourself in your company? So I'd call that building your brand identity, your brand profile, and your brand positioning. So we do practical, theory, practical. So by the end of one day masterclass, they've actually got the skills to go out and say who they are, speak for 10 minutes, speak for 20 minutes, and put a short presentation together. But somebody once asked me, do I have to be a Sheena? And I used to say yes. And then I realized that was the wrong thing to say. You don't need to be a Sheena. You have to develop your own style. But what I want people to do is to develop my processes and systems. So every aspect of communication has a formula or a system. And that's why it make what I do, it's easy for people to learn. We learn the system. For instance, if I may, if someone is looking for promotion in the police, one of the things they have to do in the police is they do 2 or 3 days assessment, and they have to do presentations, and they get 30 minutes, a topic in 30 minutes. So it's very difficult for people to put something together. But if they've got a framework, they can put something together in 5 minutes. And that's very clever to be able to do that.
Yes, so everything has a system, Sheena, even your preparation as a professional. And a question that I had for you is, I know for me, is that the way my days are run, my interactions, they're all a part of my ability to be able to deliver a professional result for people. And is that something that is important to you, the way you plan your day. I know most people who are high achieving professionals are very specific about the way they go about their days.
Yes, and I think sometimes I remember when I joined a company called Boots the Chemist that was on their graduate program, and everything they did was scheduled, and people found that a challenge. But I found that quite easy because, having been a swimmer, I was up at 5 o'clock, and between 5 o'clock and going to school after 8, I had done all these, the planning, the preparation, the training as an athlete. So when I went to school, I also found it quite easy to prioritize and schedule. So yes, your question, in the workplace, and I found when I was working from home, I started not to be very efficient because I wasn't out. And so I had to tighten up. So my day would start with the 3 M's, which is getting up and just doing a little bit of movement. 5 minutes is enough to get going. 5 minutes of meditation, and then 5 minutes of memory. And that kind of sets your body up. I've now got a bike in my kitchen, and I do 15 minutes on the bike. And sometimes I'm a bit reluctant, but I do it. And I think that it's that scheduling that trains your brain. It's like a circuit. Your brain has to become a circuit, and you have to be able to do that. And I've started now preparing at night for what I'm going to do the next day. Like, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I've already done that. And I think all of that is quite a good time saver as well. I don't know if you found that scheduling works really well.
Oh, absolutely. I schedule every day. I mean, it's been a part of my life for a long time, and it makes a big difference because, as you mentioned, Sheena, just sitting down, and I personally am a writer. I know there's a lot of people who type things. I personally love pen and paper. I'm really old school and a lot in that way for me. But that time that I take to sit there and figure out, right, that preparation time for where I'm going, who I'm going to call, knowing where I'm going to be. I mean, life changes, things shift. I mean, today, even our interview that we were going to do together, it took a turn, an unexpected turn, but you were scheduled. And I think that that makes a difference. We had a schedule, we had an agreement of what we were going to do, and that is a professional standard.
Yeah.
And it always tends to work out. Whereas there's been before, I was so tight on my time and manage my time so differently. I would have circumstances that would come up and I'd get completely thrown off because I hadn't really regimented. I didn't have the discipline of already knowing where I was going to be. It seems like, and you're from Scotland, and the 4-leaf clover, right? There's a lot of 4-leaf clovers in Scotland. And luck tends to favor people who have scheduled and planned things. That's something that I've discovered.
One of the things that I was like you with my pen and paper, but one of the things I do now, and I've only been doing it this year, on my iPhone, there is a note function. If you've got an iPhone, notes.
Mm-hmm.
And I speak into it.
Oh.
And I do everything with the microphone now.
Oh, so what you're going to do for the day, you plot it via microphone.
Into notes. I just go to notes.
Interesting.
Press the microphone. I was writing something earlier today about TED Talks. Somebody asked me about TED Talks. Oh, I wish I could get started. Could you give me some idea? And I sat, it took me 20 minutes. And I spoke about TED Talks, and I had 3 pages in less than 20 minutes. which if I'd been sitting writing, that would have taken me a longer time. And at night as well, I'll talk into it. A couple of people rung me today, and I would say, phone somebody back, do this, do that, and I've got it there. Excuse me, I've got it there. It's great. You must try that.
That I had never actually considered that, because you're sharing what you're thinking, what you want to get done. All you have to do is just go back, play the recording, and you know exactly what it was that you planned
And
for that day. It seems like a great technique.
and what I did with the TED one, you can actually go to the note and send it to your email and then print it or save it as Word. So it's like, honestly, Guy, it is one of the best.
Transcript. You create a transcript.
You transcript it
Mm-hmm.
over it. It works really well. It's interesting because Maury Pole does research, and 3 things they talk about that's world class is deliver on a promise, say please and thank you and smile, and do things in a timely manner. 3 things. They say that's what companies look for when they employ people, that they will do these 3 things. I don't know if you've...
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge believer in all, and people who work with me, those are absolutely some key components. And but I did have a question for you. So
Right.
a lot of the things that we're talking about related to professionalism can be tied into habits.
Yep.
For people out there who may be having challenges with their habits, I'm sure there are areas where we all want to have better habits. What are some of the things that you can do, or that you do when you work with people, to help them improve their habits?
I guess that takes me back to my swimming days, because I remember you'll know that swimmers wet their goggles and they dip their toe in the water. And I remember my coach said to me, "Sheena, you're a stupid girl. You've got such bad habits. Why don't you just come and do your training instead of all these bad habits?" And I thought, nobody will ever say that to me again, that I've got bad habits. So it is about having back to the schedule. Your habits need to go and fit in with your schedule. But some of the things that I do with people, one of the things I do is when people tell me that they can't achieve, they find it difficult to settle, they find it difficult to execute, I get them to go to their phone, and it's called a habit trigger. Now, this is one thing I can share with the audience. Go to your phone, go to the alarm, and put in 3 words that you would like to be or do. So if you had 3 words, Guy, what would they be? I'm catching you on the spot now.
If I had 3 words of what I would like to be or
Be or
do,
do or have a new, yeah. What would that habit be?
I am a champion.
Wow. So what you do then is you go to your alarm on your, and I'll be checking in with you in the next few days. So if you don't do this, I'll know. So if you go to your alarm and put in 3 positive words that you want to be, that triggers off a new habit pattern. That would be one thing that I think that, I mean, people say, well, just change what you do. You can't do that. You've got to break the circuit. So putting that in your phone and the third thing is you set your alarm for 11, 1 and 3 every day. And when the alarm goes off, you read these 3 words that you've written. Does that seem simple?
Oh, absolutely. Triggers. You create trigger devices for your new habit, the reframing of
your brain, yes. And I guess that although I'm a practitioner of NLP, I don't consciously say I'm going to do a session in NLP, but I think psychology, NLP, and when you've been working with athletes, it's easier in your head to plan and train and have habits. So what I do with people is I share my sporting habits with the people and say, if you were an athlete, how would you get onto the starting block? Or if you were a swimmer, what would you do when you go on the block? How would you start your day? What would you do when you go to train? How would you plan your training? How long would you do it for? And get them to start thinking like that in their daily life.
Yes, I know sports analogies, and I think the way that athletes train definitely translates a lot to the business world or the professional world. Being an athlete, a swimmer or a runner, or any athlete at a high level, the level of the habits that you have to develop, as you had talked about, Sheena, and the mindset to be a champion is something that is it's great information for those of us who may not have. I was an athlete. I was a basketball player as a young person, so I had a lot of, like you, a lot of many years of training. But not everyone has had that. But using the analogies, maybe even a person may not even really be into sports, but just the analogies, the thought process that athletes have to have, I think is just wonderful. Translates so well into the business or professional world.
I think that one of the things as well is that when you have a coach, you know, you plan, you train, you have true grit and that mental preparedness. And a coach will actually teach you tools, tips, and techniques that your competitors will not anticipate. And I think that when you take that thinking into the business world, it works really well. And so a question I got asked was, how can I be more resistant? Do I need to work more hours in the day? What do I do? And there's a bit of a myth around resistance, which, if I can share, people say that you become resistant when you build up your work. You can build up, be stronger and better. There's new research from Harvard University that suggests that resistance builds when you have quality time out. The more quality time you have every day builds your resistance. It's the opposite of what people tell you on social media. Do this, go out on your bike and just keep push. That doesn't build resistance, that builds burnout. Take quality time out. Athletes have time out every day. Musicians have time out. And we as adults, we need to look after ourselves better. And taking time out daily is what will build our resistance. It's quite fascinating. That with habits together and a different methodology of thinking works really well.
Yes, as you mentioned, there's so much information out there, Sheena, about performance, but there are principles that have worked for all of time in high performance. And it's great to hear a lot of the things that you've talked about today are really time-tested principles. And not to say that the new technology is wonderful. You talked about mechanisms that we could use to improve our professionalism, such as the tape recorder, something specifically that you talked about right on your phone. That technology gives you the ability to be more efficient because you can talk into the phone and pretty much plot out your day. But the principles, the actual principles of professionalism are timeless. And I think it's important that we remember that. Being a professional now is really no different than it was in 1760. The principles are no different.
You know, I think you're right. I mean, thinking you're a professional and being a professional is probably two different things, but I do think that we need to raise the bar. I say only be around quality people, only do quality things, only do quality tasks. And that quality standard phrase is actually so important. If you think you're falling off the wagon and you think, ask yourself every day. I have a Ferrari in my lounge, okay? A real Ferrari, a little one. And every day I got it when I was in Milan, and I'm a great Ferrari fan. And every day I ask myself, and this is another habit, did I perform well yesterday? Well, maybe I didn't. Could I perform better today? Could I position myself better? Is my brand being positioned? because Ferrari is a brand. So asking yourself some great questions about your performance and your positioning and your presence and your brand is another habit to do in the day. And even if you're feeling tired, just stop and ask yourself some of these questions. They're really, really, I guess that these habits are maybe slightly different from your usual day-to-day habits.
Well, you certainly gave us some excellent information related to improving our professionalism today, Sheena. And you do have a business where you do this for individuals. Will you share with the audience how they can get in contact with you for learning more about how to perform at a peak level by having you as a coach?
Well, people can get in touch with me on Facebook or through the professionals group. People can get in touch with me there. They can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'm easy accessible on social media. So if anybody would like to have a discovery call or have a conversation with me about an aspect that they feel is a bit of a challenge, I'm happy to have that conversation with them.
Sheena actively engages in the professionals group on Facebook on a regular basis, which we greatly appreciate. And one of the wonderful things about this group, this organization that we're developing, is that we have these peak performers at your disposal in a group like Facebook who are giving gold nuggets out every day. And you don't necessarily see that in the personal development world, Sheena, where you have people at her level who are sharing information for free every day in there. And if you want to take it to the next level, I would highly recommend Sheena as someone who can give you information to improve your systems. I know that you talk a lot about life systems, Sheena, which is really and we could do a whole, and maybe we'll do a whole podcast where we will specifically talk just about life systems and professionalism. We could do probably a full workshop just on that.
Yeah. I think that sometimes people think that, oh, if they've got to go through a process and a procedure and a system, they think, oh, I'm not sure I can do that. But that's where business coaching can actually help you to actually get over that stumbling block. You know, I think that many of us have stumbling blocks. You know, I've been learning to dance, Guy. I wasn't going to tell you this, but with difficulty. And the teacher took me out in front of the class and asked me, Sheena, don't you know the difference between your left leg and your right leg? Yes, well, why don't you do what I'm asking you to do? And she gave me a hard time. But I realized then that learning a new skill, learning to do something different, you and I, we have to be patient with people and find a simple methodology that can help these people learn new skills. And I believe that's what we do, both personally and in the professional group.
Absolutely. It's all about leadership, personal and leadership of other people, right? Sheena, is what it's really, really all about. It's about being a leader who's impactful.
Yeah. And I sometimes think I'm not working in an HR department now, but for 3 decades I was working in HR and induction and working with people and working in the business world. So all of that, you don't forget that. So when you're working with people, it doesn't matter what area of business they're in right now, we're able to support and help them.
Yes, yes. And again, thank you for stopping by, Sheena. And we appreciate all of you for tuning into the Professionals podcast. We have a group over on Facebook that Sheena had talked about that we encourage you all to join. There are some incredibly talented professionals in that group. And if you're someone that wants to take it to the next level and work with people such as Sheena and others that we have there, we invite you to join the group. We have a lot of things in development right now to bring value to those of you who want to be elite professionals. So continue to watch these podcasts, join the group, and stay tuned for more information from the professionals. We will see you all soon.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Bye.